Colleagues, important moment. We have finally all of our team together because EU delegations are with us now, as well as Switch Asia project manager. And Alessandra will give you a floor for a few greeting words, please.
Thanks everyone, and especially welcome to the new grantees that we didn't have the opportunity yet to meet. So Alessandra Leper, for those not knowing me, I'm managing the program from Brussels headquarters, but as Zanaida said, around the table you have about 20 colleagues for every delegation that I'm sure you know very well because you work daily with them. So I'm just trying to convey also their greetings, but I mean, please also colleagues, stand up somehow and maybe show who you are. Can you stand up, delegations? Please. Yeah, because you're a big part of the program, so just stand up, colleagues. Good, so that everyone sees also who you are. And then just one point for me, just before this restitution, is just to tell you that for us it's very important as a EU, as the program, then we'll enter into a new phase from next year to listen also from your experience and to hear also from you what else would you like to see in the program from grants perspective, policy perspective. So we are here with delegations to listen to you. You've been discussing topics which are relevant. They were not just topics that we chose for you to spend 2 hours with flip charts, but because whatever you're saying now will be registered in our minds. We will continue discussions also with delegation. We just had 2.5 hours of discussion together to brainstorm a bit more on the future. So really consider everyone that will do the restitution now here that what you're saying will really be taken into consideration then for the program. So it's a way for you to shape the way you want to work with Switch Asia and also the way you want the support, let's say, from delegations and at quota working also with line DGs. So maybe I leave just the floor to Zanaida to call everyone that will report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. And colleagues, again, welcome. And please keep in mind that we also have friends and colleagues watching from afar who, to a variety of circumstances, couldn't be with us, but they are also very, very welcome. And the start of our reporting. And may I just warn that I will pick up tables in a random order, starting colleagues with you. Round table number 1, well, I just walked towards you, it happened to be 1. Communication and outreach strategies for SCP. You can report from whichever point, but make sure that everybody else is seeing you and hearing you clearly. But of course, Mike will be with you. Group number 1.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Our group is Roundtable 1, number 1, because communications and outreach strategies are very, very important. That's why we get the number 1. And we had some very nice discussions, and I'm happy to present them to you today with Sam. So actually what we did is we had a discussion and we see what kind of values in this discussion were the most important for the participants. And first we would like to say, to have a high outreach and to have a good media approach, what is important is for the activities, not just to post the activities, but also to create a story. It's like the lifestyle approach from Apple, who sell their AirPods. They are selling the lifestyle, they are not selling the product, so we have to do the same. We have to sell the story. We don't have to sell the single activity. The second part is actually that we should know our audience. We should know with whom we are talking. We should make our language according to our audience. And we should not just use the same language and the same strategy for all of our participants or for all of our audience. Then we had a very interesting, a very good actually approach in our group. One of our projects, they did a contest for the logo, so for their logo. So they make a contest, they explain about the project, and then they were asking some students to design a logo with a reward. And this lead that in the beginning of the projects, when they were kicking off, they already had 200,000 followers. So this was a very good approach. We should do that. We should do more contests. We should try to engage more with our audience. Then definitely what we think what is missing in the PR and also for our activities is we need more budget. We need more recognition that public relation is important. We have to do good things, but also communicate about them. Then what is also very important is the private sector inclusion, that we are engaging with the private sector together, that the big companies are also posting about us and tagging us, that we have a higher reach. And what we also have to do is we are showing our achievements, but before showing our achievements, we have to show the reality, what happened before, like what is the baseline situation and why our achievement has such a high value, like what we changed. Then we come to the collective outcomes. First of all, the collective outcome what we had is that online and offline communication and strategy, also it's offline communication is very important, of course, but most importantly is also a strategic plan for the communication, that we know that we have a clear plan, that we know when to post something or when to engage and how to engage. So it is very important to create a plan, communication plan. And it is also very important, we have to go with the time. So this means our main question was, when an Instagram influencer is posting about his food, he has like 10,000 likes and I don't know, 5,000 reaches. But if we post about something important, what we did for our project, we have like 10 likes and 2 shares, which are like our family members. So why is it like that? And we have to avoid this. So therefore, it's very important that we are also engaging with some influencer, that we engage with some celebrities, that they are maybe also posting our things, and that we make cross-media. Then for the conflicts, we had actually one conflict, which is, I mean, we are working in development countries. There are always some conflicts going on. And very important is also about the timing of the communication. Like, for example, if there is something going on and the EU just make a statement which is not very popular in the country where we are, we should not post something, because then we need an admin who is deleting all the posts, right? Like all the comments, all the shitstorm, like they are calling it. So for us, it's very important that we have the right timing, and this is definitely a critical point. For the support, actually, we would like to have more support from the EU delegation and the Switch Asia facility. Very big is written here, budget. So we need, in our opinion, we need more budget for the whole communication point. And we need support about more content creation. Actually, Sarah already did a very nice workshop about this, but that we know what are the do's, what are the don'ts when we create content. And it would be really good if we can also, we have so many projects, if we can somehow support us by more cross-sharing our points and to share our reach also, that we have a higher reach. For the communication tools, first of all, we have infographics versus data. So what we have to do is not only take out the numbers there, not only show the numbers what we did, we also have to sell it, we have to show what we are doing, we have to make attractive infographics that the people understand what kind of outreach we have. Then definitely the think out of the box advice, that we make some content that to really maybe some shocking image, like a big pile of waste middle in the school or something, to really grab the attention of the people, to show them also about our about the importance of the work which we are doing. Then we should have visibility items, rewards, or whatever giveaways which are really matching with our project goals. For example, when you say prevent plastics, then it should not be it should be a tote bag, for example, which can replace the single-use plastic bag. Then it is also important to be always actual, and that we are going with the time, that we are creating high-level content, which is also going hand in hand with the budget which we have to really also reach everyone. And last but not least, it is very important that we know which social media platform we are using, for which target audience, and how to use them, which language to use on which platform, and so on. So that's all from my part, and now I will hand over to Sam.
Thank you for that. I feel like I'm at Wembley Arena with the big screen behind us. So yeah, just to kind of add on to what we're saying. So our conversation was also looking at communications, and we were also thinking about the role that behavior change can kind of play in communications, and also the role that communications play in behavior change, and the kind of synergies between these two areas. And really we're thinking to start, what we wanted to highlight there is fantastic to raise awareness, but really what we all want to achieve when we're raising awareness is action. We want to cause something to actually change, something to shift, and really kind of trying to highlight that all of our efforts and work in communications is also eventually about driving that kind of shift in action. And we began it as well by talking about what that enabling environment can be to drive that action. So, when we're looking at our activities, it needs to be things like often making sure there is the framework in place. So this could be the kind of legislation, the kind of material incentives. And then we kind of need these enabling environments and enabling conditions on which we can do all of our great work, including our communication activities. And as well, when we're thinking about this, we're trying to think, when we are trying to change people's behavior and cause these changes, what do we need to do? And often one of the things we were discussing as a group is that we need to speak in a language that is actually going to motivate and encourage people to make that change and that shift. And obviously for a lot of the work that we're doing and a lot of the grant projects, it's about building a business case. So talking in a language that people are actually going to listen to, and kind of building that thing that's actually going to drive the motivation. Because while we might think something is important, for example, from, let's say, an environmental perspective, maybe that's not going to be the language that works when we're trying to reach our project. So it's about trying to build that business case that is going to lead it and motivate that change. And we also talked, when we're thinking about the kind of enabling conditions and the policies, is we need to find ways to connect our projects to the national policies, maybe the ones that already exist or in development. But we need to make sure that all of our work in our communications and our activities is connecting to the national or the local initiatives that are in place. And that's really a role that a lot of us can play in this room, is forming that connections between the projects or the work that's being delivered through the facility and connecting it to the policies in the countries or regions that we're working on. So that was one of the main things we wanted to highlight, is our role as communicators to kind of form that connection. And as well, we wanted to highlight the roles of associations. So I think for a lot of our projects, one of the common themes that was coming out was that we are working on the ground with a lot of associations on a local level that have those really strong connections with the voices that we want to reach, whether that be restaurants or tourism associations or building associations, making the most of these networks and associations that have these really strong connections on the ground, and using those as kind of part of our communication voices and outlets. And it kind of connects again. So it's one of the theories often that comes through from behavior change, is that you need kind of to use things like social influence to inspire people to change and to motivate that change. And one of the things that we found through the communications and that we would recommend is using the great projects that are delivered on the ground, that they're achieving success and making that difference, and use these as the kind of technical proof, the policy proof, and use these as the evidence for the work that we're doing. So let's amplify this work that's already being delivered. Let's use this as a form of social influence, and let's use this to really communicate our messaging and demonstrate the success of the projects that are being delivered, and using that to elevate the work. And again, yeah, another great way, and I think it's a role that we can all play, is by building the local ownership of the project. So that's often the work that we're doing in country. It's the work that the different delegations are doing. Let's make people proud of the fantastic achievements we're doing. Let's get this coming out through our communications. Let's champion the work that we're achieving in our region or our country, and let's really take ownership of the successes. Because often, and I think one of the challenges we all see is it's so easy to communicate about the negatives in the work that we're doing, but let's celebrate the successes, let's celebrate what's worked, and let's use our kind of platform to elevate our success stories. And sorry, now I'm getting lost in my notes. And again, kind of building on that as well, it's about building the capacity within the local organization. So I think our network here, the Switch Asia Network's done a great job in kind of building that capacity at a local level, elevating the successes, as I was saying, and really sharing it amongst our network. So it's making sure we have that platform to do it. And by doing that, connecting the decision makers with the real voices. So when we have these platforms, whether that be, say, a large global conference, let's make sure in our communications that we're bringing the success stories, the small shop, the small kind of individuals that have been working on these projects. Let's use the kind of voices that we have through our projects to connect these small voices, these working case studies, to a kind of much larger platform to elevate the successes that we're doing. And when we're doing that, let's focus on the positives, let's elevate the successes of what we're doing. And using these kind of approaches, we were hoping that this is the way that we can drive the change that we want to see through our actions. I think that was all of our notes.
I can help you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful points. Impossible to sort of make a summary, but ranging from really taking pride in and communicating local stories in local languages with reference to local traditions, networks, frameworks, but at the same time, in addition to making stories resonate with the audience, also providing future leveraging for action, a fantastic sort of combination from engagement through story and personal touch to actions which are locally relevant, culturally appropriate. Great job to the team. Alessandra, quite a lot to inspiration for the program for the future. Thank you very much. And I suspect the next most resonating topic for discussion would come from the roundtable number 5 discussion, which is talking about leveraging knowledge towards transformation. Dwayne and the whole team, mighty team, is on.
Thank you very much. I'll call a couple of the other facilitators forward. Daniel, if you would like to, you'd like to go here? Perfect. No, I'll just hand the microphone off to Daniel. We're talking about, as Zenaida mentioned, leveraging knowledge towards transformation. And so Daniel's going to start us off. We've got 3 subtopics to discuss. So let's get started.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So you could not read that anyway, so I just go through my written words here. So we started this discussion with the role of knowledge institutions and what are the carriers of knowledge and how is the knowledge sourced and documented. So we try to identify some, let's say, standard knowledge institutions, beneficiaries, implementing partners, contracting partners, institutional partners, and of course there are all these kind of sub-layers beyond them, from association, public entities, chamber of commerce, academic institution, and so on and so forth. What is very important that we don't lose the knowledge if we are in one of these sub-layers, for example, easy to understand subcontractors. If we are hiring subcontractors and they get the knowledge, we need to take care that we get it back and can conserve it. So, however, these 4, let's say, high-level ranking institutions are not clearly identified in all of the countries. So helping to identify them would ease the communication and the knowledge transfer, definitely. One of the carriers, or in between these different institutions and partners, there is a streamlining and standardization going on. So, of course, we need to take or use a language that the others can understand, from an engineer to the others or backwards. However, knowledge is getting lost through that process, and so we need to take care that we do not forget and lose this knowledge in between the different partners. So carriers are hands-on training, online database, forums, SHP, ambassadors highlighting what we are doing, or university courses. And there are several other carriers that we can use to transfer the knowledge. Well, what we see here is, again, the knowledge, or the language is key. So using a language that conserves all the topics and the knowledge, and there is the key. We are often talking about projects, so we are talking about building energy efficiency in Nepal, for example. So my drive is to conserve the knowledge for buildings and energy efficient buildings. But it's about the topic. Just go one level higher and think about the topic and raise the question there and document it accordingly. So topic is more important than project, and that should be the case. So sources and document, how is it sourced and how is it documented? Of course, we're writing English reports, but that is not sufficient. English reports for certain stakeholders are getting again standardized, and we lose information. We need to come up with local based information that is available there. Open source thinking is also a topic that was raised. It's still not common. We grab the information. It's not clear that everything what we are doing and under our project is getting out there, it's spread. So we need to have qualitative and quantitative documents that are raising these things. And we need to force that, so to not lose any other things. And in the end, there was a discussion on best practice kills innovation and ideas. And I agree totally. We need to highlight these things, what we are doing, but in the end, just making best practice standardization, and there where we lose all this knowledge, kills the innovation. And there it's the point where you can come in. And instead of showing what is definitely needed, all the best practice, raise the questions and document it accordingly, so that it's easier to tag, easier to find, and easier to transfer in the end.
Thank you, Daniel. Now we'll go over to Mushtaq to give us the report from his subtopic.
Thank you. And before that, let me show you this so you have some idea. Okay. So I think everyone can see. So NAP is National Action Plan, and before there's a cross-sectoral. No, I just one time. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So that's a teamwork. So basically, I think this is one of the best examples, I would say, for Switch Asia's success over the 10 years. So we put Pakistan as, I got all the colleagues from Pakistan here in perspective, but this is a story of all the Switch Asia countries, whether you name it, like Thailand, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, and so on. So here, what happened that in the first phase of Switch Asia, basically, we started supporting on the sectors so first they picked up the green buildings in there, or SCP roadmap in the first phase, and then also the curriculum. So they designed the guidelines and all this by interministerial and different levels of government, and then also bringing the private sector, academia, and so on board. Same they did with the curriculum that they designed that one. And then in the next phase, we brought more focus on the SDG 12, especially the voluntary national reporting, VNRs. And then they use this all knowledge to get to the now from guidelines of the green buildings to the green building codes. and they are drafting that quite well. Now, how to implement that? So it's the same thing like we do under the Exchage, also the green public procurement, that there's a public procurement. So there is building bylaws. So how you turn that into green public procurement or green public, green bylaws to have a codes. Now they need a legal framework. So on the rate is what is required in the next support system. So you build the capacity of the implementers. Implementers not means only the regulators, but implementers also like who do the infrastructure development and construction, designing, everything. And then the legal frameworks and so on. And then it comes to scale up. So suppose Pakistan, as you might know, under the flooding, a lot of loss. So like I'm also, because I'm also on the Pakistan UN country team as UNEP is the non-resident. So even this morning we had a quite intensive meeting, and in New York is going on. So today, tonight here, but today in New York, Pakistan Minister Sherry Rahman is meeting with her Executive Director Inger Anderson. And in her notes, again, I put the Exchage and all this, that how the reconstruction can go. This is a rather opportunity that you push for the green energy, you push for the green buildings and so on. So that is very important to look at that. Same with this curriculum. There's a lot of data is required. SCP, you talk about transport, energy, food, energy, you name it. Data. Data science is the key. So next phase, we are looking how to support them to build their capacity on the data science for the SCP that can connect, for example, under the other EU support, we have an international resource panel. So in Asia, the inefficiency is this way that we consume 50% of natural resources while contribute only 30% to the global GDP. But within Asia, Japan creates one additional dollar of GDP with 0.25 kg, while Mongolia creates with the 13.5 because of mining, China at 5.25. So how you bridge this? All that requires a lot of data science and so on. And fourth, which is the most important, is now, as you know, the plastic UNIA resolution on the coming with the new global instrument and so on. And next week, our executive director will be here. So I'm organizing quite intensive meetings with the ambassadors and so on. So this is important that Pakistan has picked up, but they are putting it across the sectors. So waste is not just a waste sector. Waste in agriculture sector, waste in the production center, waste in the electronics, in the automobiles and so on. So same with the plastics, it comes across the sectors, whether it be the packaging and so on. So that's where Pakistan is looking how that. So this is a story of not only the creating the knowledge, but utilizing the knowledge for additional next steps and so on. And this is a situation for the success of the Exchage across the region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mushtaq. I just have a couple of quick other points on our third topic, which was identifying the characteristics of successful knowledge co-creation and cross-sectoral learning and knowledge generation. As you could tell from the two previous presentations, we had quite different perspectives at the tables. And so we started out with an analysis of this type of system from an SME perspective. So we looked at knowledge sharing, generation, co-creation, and SMEs in East Asia in particular, Central Asia as well. And we found that one really important tool for sharing knowledge was through industry associations and clusters. These tended to be and tend to be informal, and thank you, Zenada. These associations and the linkages that they form tend to be informal and could use support. They could use some help in facilitating, and in some cases, many of the grant projects are providing just this. We then looked at NGOs, research organizations, knowledge creators, more formally speaking, and knowledge generation, this co-creation, often happened from collaborations between partners, and these happened through more formalized networks and relationships between NGOs within the region and globally, between, of course, experts in the SCP facility, the EU delegations, and beyond, universities being a great example. And a really important part of the knowledge generation here was communication channels. As we heard in the previous presentation, communications and awareness raising, getting the information out there, using the right language, reaching your audience is really important. It's key to getting broader uptake. And so really taking this knowledge generation into the next level. So, we then talked about government. As you just heard, the National Action Plan in Pakistan was a good example. The government can be a key facilitator here of knowledge generation. Government creates a lot of knowledge through statistical data analysis. It's publicly available. And government can play a huge role in creating demand for new types of products, new processes. They can set the rules of the game, and this creates the incentives for innovation, for new knowledge creation, for collaboration across sectors. So a really good kind of example of this is looking at a value chain approach and really engaging people at every level to spread tacit knowledge as well. So not just thinking about academic knowledge, but thinking about knowledge that you learn and getting people on board through demonstration. And finally, we had a wonderful group that took a much more philosophical and sociological approach to knowledge generation. And we had a proposition of creating a database rather than a database of questions and answers that we propose at these conferences, but maybe creating a database of what we don't know, looking at kind of the empty spaces rather than what we typically do. Maybe starting with a proposition that everyone is living sustainably, and then looking back from there and asking the questions as an offering rather than offering answers. So it's a very interesting kind of turning on its head. And I think that many of us are doing just this. And I encourage you all to really ponder that. So thank you.
Thank you to the team, and the richness of reflections is such that all of us, if asked individually, I'm sure would pull out a different number of highlights. So allow me to pick up 2 or 3 which spoke to me. And one of them is, of course, the team from Pakistan reinforcing once again the fact that the knowledge should inform policy making and actions at different level, for sure. So this point is coming over, and we are thanking you for that. And 2 other teams reinforced a couple of other interesting things. And one of them is that a lot of data is being generated around. And of course, it's being manifested in different areas, in work of industry, in work of the government in some places. So the big data industry 4.0, fourth industrial revolution, etc., refer to that. And certainly for us, an interesting question soon will be, how do we, Alessandra, within this program, engage with this question or do not, or find intermediaries which help us to make sense of an enormous amount of data which is out there. And what is interesting, it certainly refers to the question which comes twice from the discussion of this group, and this is the question, what do we not know? And whoever is interested in the whole question of risk and risk management probably immediately recall Ulrich Beck Risk Society writing, right? Where the questions is not only what we know and where the risks are, but the most important question, what it is we do not know, but which could influence dramatically our actions in the future. And thank you to this team for bringing it up. In the current circumstances of increasing risks, this kind of questions and potentially this interesting idea of database would be quite something to have at our disposal. Thank you very much to the team. And with this, we move to the round table. I'm walking to you to see the number. roundtable number 4, the private sector engagement. Perhaps it's quite a logical connection, particularly with respect to data. So who will be presenting? Thomas? Certainly.
We roundtable 4, we talk about engagement with private sector strategies, working with small and large companies, and we had 3 topics, subtopics in it, and each of the heads of the facilitators, resource persons for these topics will do it. We'll start with this nice gentleman here, coming all the way from Denmark to Bangkok, just to tell you this. Jen, over to you.
Thank you.
He's supported by Sanjay. From
I will only be speaking for 30 seconds and then Sanjay will take over. Then I will hold the poster. We were discussing critical factors for engaging SMEs in sustainable consumption, production and circular economy. We were looking on what are the drivers for them to get engaged, what are the risks for them to consider strategies for circular economy, what are the major challenges, and based on all 3, what is it that the Switch Asia facility can do in the future in phase 3 for addressing some of these things that we have found or discussed. And if you take over here.
Yeah. Thank you. So on the table, our table, we had a huge discussion, and it's impossible to capture all the views coming from the members, right? But we have tried to pick up, certain important points after the discussion, and I will be speaking only on those points. So it was about the engagement with the private sectors, and when we talk about the private sectors, naturally, our emphasis focuses on the SMEs because they are the one who are, or I will say the driver for the economic development and employment, especially if you consider this region, Asia Pacific region. So we looked at the driver. What are the drivers for the, integrating the circular economy or SCP policies or practices in SMEs or in business in general? So the first driver is resource constraint. I think everybody will agree that, the world resources is limited, right? We do not have the resources, and everybody wants to go and achieve the lifestyle, comparable to, maybe in the Western country or maybe in the America. But we do not have the resources. So how do you manage the resources and at the same time you grow and you improve the quality of life of the people, in the Asia Pacific region? And the second issue related with the resource constraint is commodity price is increasing. If you look at the, the chart over the 50 years, commodity prices have been increasing. So how do you manage, that cost into your business? And the second driver is coming from, the market demand. So who are the market? Where is the market? Market is, if you look at the millennial, the people born after the 2000s, they are the one, who are driving the market and driving the changes. My children, I believe that they are much more, focused on environmental and sustainability issue as compared to what I was or my generation was at their age, right? So demand is coming for the, sustainable products. Demand is coming for the product which consume less resources. It consumes less energy. It is not harmful to the, the people's health. So demand is coming. Market is there, and demand is coming. And the third is, the tighter regulation. If you move around the country in the last, couple of years, there are several countries coming up with the new regulation every day, and they are bringing, regulation to contain the damages which the industry has been doing in the past, right? And since most of the countries, they have committed to the, carbon neutrality goals starting from 2040 to 2070s, most of the countries are going to come up with, again, a regulation in some form that how do you minimize the, take into account carbon pricing, how do you achieve the neutrality goals and so on. So all these 3 put together is a big driver for change. Then we came to the, what are the risks, right? when we discuss the risk, how do the business perceive SCP or circular economy as a risk, then we came to the conclusion that most of the risk which they perceive is due to their non-understanding of the subject, right? They have not been able to, understand the subject. When we call, circular economy, what does it mean? And this is especially relevant for the SMEs, right? They don't understand, circular economy. They don't understand SCP and so on, right? And the second question, comes is regarding the cost. If any manufacturer, if any SMEs want to, invest in the cleaner production, they need resources, right? So they think of it like, if I'm going to invest much of money, whether I'm going to get the return out of that, who is going to bear the cost, right? They still have a confusion in their mind that when you integrate sustainability, sustainability and the cost, is two different things, right? So that is again a risk they see. And the third is, especially this is relevant to the countries in this part of the world, like low perception about, recycled goods, or low perception about the reused good. I don't want to buy the reused cycle. I don't want to buy reused car or dresses. If somebody has already worn, I don't want to purchase, right? So how do we deal with this challenge? How do we educate? That is the role of, the communication team, They need to emphasize, change the people behavior, right? So we will coming on the solutions. And the third is, what are the challenges, right? So for SMEs, the challenges are many, in fact. It relates to the time. They don't have, time to invest, because most of the time the SME is managed by one single owner. He's the one who is driving, he's looking after marketing, he's looking after operation, he's looking after sourcing, he's looking after everything, communication, branding, everything. So they don't have time, and at the same time they don't have resources, right? And the second thing is, lack of role models, right? For a larger company, you have a role model, right? You hear that you have a blah blah car which did so many business. You have a role model of, Ola, Uber, right? You have a role model of Airbnb and so on. But where are the role model coming for the SMEs, right? So if somebody asks you, where are the role model? Give me 5 examples of the SMEs who have done good on, integrating circular economy principle in their business, and they have succeeded in business. We go blank, right? So we need to create a role model, right, to scale up circular economy. And the third is, this is also due to the lack of, enforcement regulation, which is already there in the countries, right? This pertains to, in general, slackness in implementing regulation. But that is also a challenge. If you want to move on that, then probably we need to implement in a much better way. So what are the strategy? What we are asking from the Switch Asia, right? What we are asking is, build a local capacity. If our colleague from the Maldives was saying, where is the local capacity to integrate sustainability into the business, or circular economy in their business, in their tourism sectors, and at the same time, simplify. The whole concept of circular economy and SCP needs to be simplified, right? It needs to be told in a language which is understood by the SMEs. You tell them that, okay, circular economy means how do you reduce your waste, right? How do you improve your efficiency? And explain them, right? So we need to simplify the whole concept of circular economy, and which are relevant to the, yeah, I'll just, last point. And, sharing whatever the knowledge we are creating, in the region, we need to share with them, and we need to provide a platform to scale it up. Can we say, or can we guarantee that, okay, one SME is coming up with some solution on circular economy, and we as a region, we as a community, we give them the platform to scale it up to the whole region, right? So that was what we are asking. But the last point, you may be wondering why I'm not talking about the finance, right? I'm not talking about finance, I did not talk. But the finance is everywhere, you know. It is related to the, you know.
We didn't pay enough for the...
Yeah, enough. So finance is everywhere, whether you talk about the challenges, where you talk about the, you know, the risk, where you talk about the, you know, support which we desire. Thank you so much. Anything you would like to add? Yeah. Thank you.
The second topic that we discussed was on encouraging innovation in small, medium, and large businesses for CPA. And Mark, flying all the way from Vienna, will present.
I take this one? Yes. Thank you, Thomas. And I'll try to be brief. We had enormously rich discussions with the three tables and the three set of experts, and so I apologize beforehand if we don't. For water treatment technologies, well, that is not going to do it. It's a whole mindset that needs to be brought into a sufficient number of people in these SMEs, and only then will it actually lead to a lasting change. And when it comes to technology, an important statement that was also put forward was bear in mind the complexity of certain technologies that are brought forward or that are implemented, taking into account the local capacities. And maybe South-South cooperation could be given more importance in terms of looking at technologies that are more appropriate to the specific context. That is one. The second one, coming up unsurprisingly, is access to finance. And we elaborated quite a bit on, well, what exactly does it then mean and how should it then be delivered. It refers also in a way to the discussion we had this morning in terms of should we, or should initiatives like Switch Asia facilitate financing or try to provide financing directly, or should we look at creating the demand and creating the market, as people suggested this morning. And we discussed a little bit on this demand creation and how could that then happen. And one thing that was mentioned was, well, consumer demand can play a role in the need for more sustainable clothing or other products. But it was also recognized at the same time that consumer demand alone will not give a sufficient driver, to use the word of the previous group, to actually make a change in the market, and that the carrot and the stick was used a lot also as a wording, and there was some grumbling and some concern that there is a lot of stick coming in terms of EU regulations, in terms of national regulations, but maybe not enough carrot. And related to that is then also the point of, well, one carrot that works for one country might not work for another country. So the importance of recognizing that different countries need different approaches. A country like India or a certain sector in India might be more mature, might be simply bigger than a sector in, say, Kyrgyzstan or Mongolia. And then finally, what also came up was, well, we can talk about SMEs and the role of innovation in them, but nothing will actually happen or will not be sufficiently meaningful if it is not looked at from a value chain approach. It's not just the SME; the whole value chain that needs to be looked at. And in terms of that, one of the start of the solution can also be to make sure that startups, incubators are triggered, are supported with technical assistance, with testing of certain new technologies to bring them to commercial viability, and in that way also shake up the sometimes maybe conservative mindset of bigger players that dominate the market, the actual buyers. And with that, in a way, I make it circular because it's all about mindset in the whole value chain. I think I try to cover it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. I want to say that I want to compliment all of these people. I think Melody is going to do the third one. covering on ensuring sustainability of business transitions for SCPs and the circular economy. The questions asked are pretty intensive. For each question, we decided that you can do a PhD subject on it, or at least a master's thesis. And I think you should compliment the great summaries that you all have done so far. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, can we hold this? Okay. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Melody from WWF, and I'm representing the Grants Project. So for the questions, we divided our answers into 4 quadrants. We have the trends that is observed in the business community. The second one are the long-term strategies leading to circular business models. The third one would be factors that sustain interest of the private sectors to continue SAP-inclined business models. And the fourth one would be the recommendations that we want to give the facility, EU Switch Asia facility, in engaging the private sector in moving towards circular economy. So for the trends, so the trends that our colleagues in our team observed would be efficiency that is forced basically by different factors. The first one would be high prices, and generally because of the scarcity, it's really evident that resource efficiency in terms of energy, water, and other natural resources are observed. The second one would be business transparency. A clear, honest sustainability claims is deemed to drive a competitive advantage, most especially that consumers now demand for green products and services. The third one would be using transformative technology to reduce carbon footprint. The fourth one is using sustainable packaging or improved packaging. The fifth one would be adherence to legislation, because of course the businesses have nothing more to compete with legislation, so they have to adhere to that. Resource constraints, energy efficiency, water are part of the efficiency trend. Then businesses are also now supporting grassroots movements, especially those who do not know how to start their sustainability journey. So what they do is to partner with or support grassroots movements to jumpstart their journey towards sustainability. Then for the strategies that we also see and we also identified, the first one would be to continuously capacitate. So capacity development is very much important for businesses, most especially SMEs, to keep up with the demands towards circularity. Then the second one is to strengthen private-public dialogues, and that would ensure that associations, in particular, those that are related to supply chains and value chains, are tapped with these conversations. And transformative technology can be a trend, but also a long-term strategy for us to move forward in our aim towards circularity. Then focus on proper business conduct. So in relation to that would be strict enforcement of our ESG standards, most specifically for governance, highlighting just labor, fair trade, human rights, etc. So it's not just about environment always. And also, how do we ensure that the governing mechanisms in place are also critical for the alignment for businesses for them to transition to such changes. Then addressing gap between large companies and SMEs, because they have huge disparity in terms of their transition. So we have to ensure that large companies, they have the resources to do that, but SMEs, they don't have it. So what can we do? Then alignment with policies, of course, focus on governance, and have standards, rankings, and recognition. Because, of course, at the end of the day, people would want to be recognized with what they do, right? So those are the things that we see as strategies. Then for the factors to sustain interest, that sustain the interest of the private sector. So of course, one way for them to sustain their interest is to adhere to law. And that law should be properly implemented and enforced. The second one would be supporting the alignment of these transitions. And we said earlier with one of my colleagues, financing is a big factor for them to align their business models to such enforcements or such laws. Then local skills building, most specifically for SMEs. And we have to strengthen also the position of businesses and their impact in their respective communities. I think that is one of the reasons why businesses now are starting to go the sustainability way, because they see that they really impact communities. And a lot of them are ensuring now that they support these communities. Then what are the recommendations for the Switch Asia facility in terms of engaging the private sector? So talk more about SCP. So measuring, monitoring, managing, reporting. So it's a cliche that what gets measured gets managed, but we cannot end in just management. We have to see that what gets managed gets valued. And what gets valued gets sustained. So that's, I think, the most important idea for that. Address skills gap of SMEs. And with that, we also suggest or recommend that there will be strong private-private partnerships. So large companies can partner with SMEs. It's like a big brother thing, so that they can, get some guidance from the large companies for them to transition. Then talk more about sustainable consumption, sustainable procurement, work with governments on incentivizing investments, innovation, and they can be done by, well, we use taxes, but we also use ease of doing business, we also use recognition, we also use ranking. Then another suggestion that we really took account for was the treatment of governments for large companies and SMEs equally in terms of regulation, in terms of standards, in terms of what do you call this one? The support that they will be getting. Then strengthen extended producers' responsibility and creating index on a global and regional level. So to end our presentation, we see that private sector are somewhat the culprits of what we are experiencing right now, but we see that they are strong allies also in our pursuit for environmental protection and responsibility. And we must make sure that they will work responsibly for everyone, everywhere, and every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the team. My own team is telling me that food is getting cold, but the only thing I can facilitate the process with is to turn immediately the floor to the next team, which is speaking about market transformation, because I'm pretty sure that their reaction would be either complimenting or somewhat contesting the points made by your group. Please. Yeah.
You can use both mics. Yeah.
Yeah, folks, so we took our brief very seriously, as you can see. So we've given you guys a visual of what was the key idea that we wanted to present. So we've done a combination of SDG 12, SDG 17 here. So our key visual here was, for market transformation to happen, it's critical that we align all the different stakeholders. So we've got here all the stakeholders in a kumbaya kind of a way, but you've got the government, the finance sector, consumers, businesses, primary producers, and CSOs. So for making and for actualizing market transformation, we need all of these guys to come together. We need all of them to be aligned, and we need the network effect to kick in. So I'm just going to very quickly zip through what were the roles that we saw the different stakeholders play. So critically, we see from the consumer's perspective, there's an important aspect of awareness building, awareness and understanding of what is the need for that transformation or change in the marketplace. But also that would spur the demand. That would spur the consumer need and create the business case also for making the switch. Businesses have a very important role, both at the large scale, but also at the MSME sector. And businesses need business cases for market transformation to happen. While maybe at an initial stage, we may need incubators to support the innovations, to support hitting a critical mass, to support the economics to be worked out. But for transformation to take place, we need the business cases to be made at the MSME sector, and for the big businesses, a bit like the point that we heard about the carrot and stick. So we need the nudge coming from policy, coming from consumers, so that the big businesses also participate, because without that, market transformation would not happen. Primary consumers need to understand, again, the need for sustainability and for adopting sustainability. And here, of course, their own sustainability is also important to consider. So it's not just training them or building their capacity to follow better practices. Those practices should lead to their economic betterment as well, otherwise it's not going to percolate. And then we're going to need economies of scale ultimately for that to lead to a transformation. CSOs we see as a catalyst in bringing all the stakeholders together. So
recording
that is something
stopped.
That we see as an important role that they play. But for us, I think government, we saw wears many hats. So we've seen across many case studies from energy to sustainable agri-value chains, the big discussions about sustainable transport and mobility. Government policy can have a huge impact on transforming market. Government procurement can also be a catalyst. Governments can facilitate access to finance or help de-risk in the initial stages, when the transition is happening, and critically invest for infrastructure. And also facilitate in the incubation stage at the initial part of the concept development. So that was our contribution. Thanks.
Okay, so we have some different visuals. So I will keep it very brief. I think that we had some discussion of what market transformation is. It's a very trendy or jazzy term, but to get some sense around it. So one might say that basically it's the way to cross the valley of death, which many people are referring to, between what are the ideas and then the mainstream markets. And we propose basically a two-staged bridge which crosses the valley of death. Some others were suggesting it should be a camel with two ones, but we were not so capable of drawing that. So we made it this way. So we basically have the first stage, which is bring us from an idea to large, you might say, a niche market, an established product. And then from a niche market to mainstream market would be where really the market transformation takes place. So this is more about clean tech innovation and commercialization. This is more about scaling it up and getting it into the market. So I think then, and we discussed a number of factors, not really want to go and elaborate on everything, but key points here are, as you're going to get from an idea to a niche market, we need to increase product value. So that's the value of the idea to the final consumer, and that is often focused upon. The second point is that we need to also increase investor value, because the clean tech solution or the new product needs to be embedded in a business that people can invest in. And if that is done, we can get to a niche market. Then to get from niche market to a mainstream market, it seems like there are three kind of things which have to be achieved, and there's different means for doing that. But first of all, we need a level of consumer confidence that what you buy as an alternative product is indeed a sustainable or better than else. So it's not greenwash, it is really actually much better. Then there is we typically talk about creating demand, but in our view it is more about aggregating demand. So there's maybe enough pockets of demand, but we need to bring it together so that it's clearly aggregated and put a pool for the market. And then of course we have the element of the enabling policy and financing which could come in, and the networks which are there. So I'll keep it with that simple image, and then I think we have a third image.
Yes. Speaking of the interaction between policy and finance, we also discussed the key characteristics of successful green finance programs and how to spur market transformation. I'll keep this very short and sweet. We visualize this by shedding a light on setting up successful models and highlighting the successful models and pilot projects and best practices. And in turn, this sheds more light on how we can facilitate demand through sales, marketing, awareness raising, and incentives, what incentives are working, if this is either carbon pricing or tax incentives, guarantee funds. In turn, we can connect the value chain through different partnerships, and eventually this will lead to the scaling up of green finance programs, all based on shedding the light on these initial pilot projects and models. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you could see that the last two teams, or two roundtables, brought quite a number of leverage points. You described different kinds of consumers and instruments, and this team even prioritized that. And what is very interesting, particularly coming from this group, that in my view, Alessandra, they are bringing yet new potential consumers and areas of policies which are important and interesting for us to consider. For us, well, at the moment we are very much Switch Asia, for you to plan and consider for the future. And another team which is really lived through the crossing of the value of death, meaning between the grant projects and policies, is exactly the team number 3? Two, forgive me, which really talked about connection between the activities on the ground done by the grants and the engagement with the policies. You crossed the value of death, so tell us, how was it?
Yeah, how was it? We decided to split the presentation in 3 parts, and every part takes approximately 20 minutes, so I think you will have to wait another hour for lunch. I'm sorry to say this, but we couldn't cut it. No, of course we could. So my job is to present you a very simplified summary of the snapshot of our discussion on how policy processes, project, grant implementing organization interact with each other, how they may learn from each other, and then my 2 co-resource persons or co-facilitators jump in and will give you some more specific examples just to illustrate what we mean by this. So, and of course we are on an event which is about circular economy approaches as well, and we draw a circle, so because it fits very well. And you see here the Switch Asia projects and the policy process. And our impression was that it's not only in this direction or in this direction, it goes in both directions. And sometimes it might be interrupted, but usually it repeats itself. So there is exchange between the grants and policy processes, and policy processes create enabling environments. Sometimes they are disruptive, like border conflicts. This is one example from our table that really make things difficult, but this is the more general policy environment, if you want to say so. And projects generate ideas for the policy process, and if it's successful, and we had a number of successful examples, this might even result in laws, regulations, action plans, whatever, that then help again implementing the projects and achieving impact on the ground. And I think this is very important. And we also identified, this is the interaction between the policy process and the projects, and then we have, of course, the various projects in the regions, in a single country, how they interact. And this is maybe one of the things where we observed kind of a room for improvement, that there's a need for more communication, exchange between project grants and the project. So we had one example, two people working on the same area, on the same topic, in the same countries, and they didn't know each other. So I think this is a good example that there's really a kind of need for platforms or something different. And we also identified some, only some, but I think they are very important, some key factors that contribute to let's say, to run this circle and make it successful, and its communication, but rather the internal communication, not the external communication side that with which this session started today, and a commitment. That was one keyword that was raised quite often. Commitment on the policy side, commitment from the projects, but also commitment from the EU delegations, not only in terms of funding projects, but also as door openers in governments, in the authorities, so that the topics, because whether this circle runs also depends very much on whether the topic is on the agenda and whether the government or the authorities are committed to this topic. And before I hand over to my two colleagues, let me seize the opportunity to just introduce one example that I was involved on, where we tried to bring all these different levels together, let's say in a co-creation process, and you have the result of this process in your in this thing. This is the open letter on the international legally binding agreement to end plastic pollution, where we consulted with stakeholders, with national focal points, with governments, on challenges in Asian countries with regard to plastic pollution, plastic governance, on their needs in the context of a global plastic agreement. And this letter is still open for signature. So if you want to join, please don't hesitate to contact me or Cosima Star, and we are happy to tell you how it works. Okay, and now I hand over to the resource person, and thank you.
Okay, so follow up.
Excuse me, can I just interject very, very quickly, colleagues? So this open letter text is in your folders. You can just consult it right away. It is already with you. Just a small piece of information. Apologies, colleagues, please.
Okay, so I'll just give some examples of the partnerships within and outside of the Switch Asia network that was discussed at our roundtable. So we have both negative and positive examples. Just a couple of negative ones would be, as previously mentioned, there's a lack of information between state organizations and the projects. An example is we had also one representative of a state organization and a representative of a project sitting at the same table, and there was lack of knowledge. They didn't know about the project, so that was one example. Another negative kind of example that was discussed is the general lack of cooperation between state organizations and projects. On the plus side, on the positive side, there were also cases where the EUD's involvement in connected Switch Asia projects and the mentioned state organizations really boosted the relationships between the two. And the EUD was able to do this by being actively involved in the Switch Asia project activities. And another positive example was signing an MOU between state organizations and the project. And it depends on the it depends on each party, right? The success of that MOU. And some ideas that came out of the discussion was, well, just a couple of ideas, is establishing a cluster of sector experts to ensure replication of the project, and also to have a platform of the international Switch Asia projects to share experience and knowledge, as there are many similar projects in the same sector across all the different countries. So we thought that would be a very useful tool. So over to Kanat. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So we had a very interesting discussion at our table, but unfortunately due to time limit, I will not be able to highlight all of them. So I will highlight just a few examples that came up during our discussion at our table. So it was a very interesting case in India where there was actually very good case when Switch Asia grant produced and supported development of database related to leather sector and leather cluster in India, and best practices aimed at the pollution control in this cluster. And it was a very good experience. And actually the project was able to communicate it in a very effective way to the decision makers at the government level. And then the government of India actually upscaled this experience to other 400 enterprises working in the cluster of leather production in India, and it also provided subsidies to these enterprises. So it's a very good example how Switch Asia grants actually promoted and facilitated the policy dialogue, and then the government supported this very good policy and provided support to other enterprises, SMEs. Another example how SCP grants and technical assistance, for example, can cooperate effectively could be that SCP could provide a platform for cooperation between SCP, Switch Asia grants at the national and regional level, because sometimes it was so much interesting information at our table, and but we didn't know about other projects in Central Asia, for example, working in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, and it would be very good if SCP facility would support this not only on the, let's say, global level like here, but also at the regional level, sub-regional level. And another example, maybe not so positive, is about, let's say, border conflicts. In Central Asia, recently we had a border conflict between some countries, and of course, these events, they influence very negatively the tourism sector in general, and how this grants and SCP projects can operate in such an environment. And talking about the global agenda, also we have this COVID-19 policies at the global level, which of course interpreted differently at the national, regional level. And all of this, of course, led to very, let's say, specific circumstances, and let's say all of our grants really suffered. And of course, this is also example how the global policy can influence the actions at the local and national level. So this is it from our table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Alessandra, you had insight from 15 presentations by now, which is extremely rewarding, I think. So we can see that quite a lot of experiences were lived through with negative and positive results. There are brilliant ideas of how to move forward, of course, required systematization. And rather than going through my comments, may I just offer the floor to you to maybe highlight some of the selective and certainly not complete observations before we close the session and go for discussion tomorrow.
Yes. So I will be very brief. It was challenging for the quantity and quality. Challenging because my jet lag is trying to get me, but I tried to follow, and I also took notes, so I hope it's good. No, just a few points that I took note of and I think are relevant for us, and I also, if colleagues from delegations are still around and they want to comment, please come just after me. Keywords that I heard is we need to sell the story and not the activities once we do communication. I think this is exactly the point. Out there, the audience out there, but also the information that we want also somehow to reflect back then to Europe. It's not just about which activities are implemented, but actually what you're doing exactly. So the story that you're telling behind it. I understood also that we need to link more and better than projects among them, so probably at our platform where you can interact also among yourselves. We have 43 projects ongoing, and every 2 years in general we have 20 new ones. So the challenge is increasing, but we will find also solutions for this, and also building capacity at local level to communicate more on the story. One point on communication, very important, is that we need to keep the communication at program level. And this is something that will be compulsory also for the future and more for future grants. So we will need then to get the support actually from the facility in this case that collects all the information and does the communication on the program at this macro level. This is also what is requested by the Commission itself once communicating on a program. So I think you should rather see also the positive side of it, that we have an expert working 24/7 on it. But what we are asking you is also to create these stories in a way directly that they make sense, so that we can react also very quickly in communicating about your projects, and also in a relevant way, and cross-sharing the information. Not losing the knowledge between partnerships, I think it was mentioned on this side, and I think also very important. On private sector and investment, just a few words is the complexity of the subject, which goes back again about how we're able to communicate if we do understand also the topic. And if we don't understand the topic, probably we also understand the objective behind it. So why we are financing 43 projects today is to support circular economy at CP. So we need to fully understand the content and let's say the concept behind it. We look more at value chains. That's my jet lag. And this is important. We need to work across the region. We need to look what is going on in other countries, because the point is that our value chains are not just national. So raise the hand who has a national value chain that is pure national around here. And the same it's when you look at Europe. Also Europe doesn't have value chains that are just country based. The link to investment, access to finance, we need to aggregate demand. This is very important. Once we will try to work more with financial institutions. We have the privilege also to have here with us also Melanie Kangen. She's our expert on investment, sitting here in this delegation. There is a whole team also behind her in Brussels working on this topic. So we are not alone, luckily, and they're very much supportive. So together with George and the team that sit in front of my office. So connections should be possible. And then last point from the last tables is also the role of delegation. Again, some discussion that we will continue maybe with colleagues in the next weeks, also to be more present to connect this project side, project dimension and the policy dimension, challenging for the reason that I just told you also about 43 projects overall, but that's point taken. So we have a lot of work to do actually to improve the program from January onwards. I think I'll stop here unless any colleague have any reaction. But I believe that we are all tired also, so probably I'll just leave the word. Yes, I'll leave the word maybe to you on technical communication for evening today, tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, also for your resilience, interest. So, well, jet lag is certainly defeated. Colleagues, it's not the end of the discussion, it's a pause. And in a few minutes, we will be expected at the Diplomat Bar at the ground floor for the reception dinner. So 6:30, food and service and us. The team are happy to welcome you there. So that is more or less all for today, except a few technical announcements. So we all will meet tomorrow at 9 in the morning here, this official opening, and going for more in-depth discussion, also more and more oriented to how to deliver quality, lasting impact with the next stage of the program. Please do come after taking ATK test. This is what allows us to remove our masks every now and then in the closed sort of surface, rooms. If somebody forgot tomorrow to take etiquette test, don't worry, we have some spare at the reception. When you come, please do register at the reception every day when you come, because it's a bit of again accounting process for us. Those who didn't register today, please sign up there as well. Those participants which are being supported, please do give all documents related to your visa and also your boarding passes at the reception as well. Do I miss something, ladies? No, it seems like not, and therefore this meeting is closed, and we will see you downstairs in a more relaxed, creative, and wonderful environment with a little jazz on the background. So, see you all downstairs.